So I'm going to take the next few minutes to, again, keep the RAM intro and overview going and showing you some of the basics inside of Unity before we actually start doing our terrain digging. So in Unity, this is hole one. We've got our cart path over here on the left and this water body here on the right. And so let me show you the two different types of RAM splines first and how you add them to your scene. So first of all, if we're going to do like a cart path or a creek, we're going to do what we call a river spline. So if we right click, 3D object, create river spline. And you can see as soon as I do that, I get this RAM spline over here on the left. And under the inspector, that changes to my RAM specific interface. And we'll be doing a lot of work over here. But in here, it gives you kind of like an idea of what you need to do to start applying this. So it's saying if I hold down control and left mouse click, I'll add a point. So let me go over to my golf path here, hold down control and click. And as if I just hold down control and begin moving my mouse and clicking, you can see that I start building out my RAM spline. And I put in 5 points there, and you can see that I have this like plane. It is a spline on my course, and half of it is uncovered because it wants to flatten things out, which is really what we want ultimately, right? And you can see here what happens is some of it's under my terrain and some of it's above my terrain. And if I click up here on this widget, I can actually manipulate these, so I can grab these things and I can move them around. Um, just so we close the loop here in creating, let's create another one, but let's do a lake polygon. So down here, let me go back into my hierarchy, right click, 3D object, and create a lake polygon. So I get the same interface that comes up over here. And let me go over to a better angle here on my water. And I got the same thing. I can control left mouse click. So click here. But you can see as I do this, it's a little bit different. I'm not getting like a straight path. It's filling in a circle. And so if I just click around the perimeter, you can see now that I start to get more of like the same splines that we create in Inkscape. And the same thing as before is that I can kind of click and I can drag and then I can move that around. So I've got 2 splines now. Let me give you a better angle to look at here. I've got my lake polygon, which is circular, and I got my RAM spline over here, which is more narrow and long. So if I go back over to my RAM spline, you know, as I change this, it changes my inspector panel. So let me go back over here to my RAM spline. And under the basic stuff, some of the things that I can do is I can change the entire width of this. Now I know that I created a cart path that was just shy of 3 meters. So I'm going to change this to 3 meters and do that for the whole river. And now you can see that's a little bit more narrow and it matches my cart path a little bit better. Lake Polygon, I don't have that option, right? Because, well, it doesn't have a width like that, okay? Um, RAM spline, I can also go over back in here and I can adjust each point. So I can change each point. So I got point 0 through point 5 over here. So here you can go, I can change all those, I can rotate them. I don't really mess with this too much. That's getting pretty granular. One of the things that we're really going to use though is this terrain area here. And when I go to this terrain area, I got this idea around terrain carve. And this is going to be very important when we're trying to use RAM to carve our terrain. So first of all, if I click on here and I bring up this graph, this is my carve curve or my terrain carve profile, what we call it. So when I dig, this is the shape on how it's going to dig. So right here I've got, it says 0, so this would be ground level, -1, so this is a meter down. So what you can see here is it's going to start approximately half a meter up in the air, and it's going to dig down to -4 meters. That's not what I want to have it do to create a cart path. I just want it to flatten. So down here, there's these profiles, and I can create new profiles and I can manipulate these. Let me click on this one, and this is just flat. So with this profile, it's just going to make something flat, and I can move this. So I'm going to move this down to ground level, basically 0 because I want to create a flat surface here. All right, I'm going to save this, and now my terrain carve here is going to be flat. Then I have something called smooth. So smooth is how aggressive is RAM going to be, or not aggressive RAM going to be, with manipulating the terrain outside of this spline to smooth it and integrate it into my existing terrain. And that's going to make more sense in a second. So this is like an opacity setting level, like a strength setting. And then I've got my smooth distance, which is, hey, how far away from my spline, okay, am I going to manipulate the terrain to, blend it into to the area around it. Um, so 5 means I'm going to go out 5 meters. That might be okay here, but keep in mind that if there was a green or maybe a bunker near here, I'd have to be a little bit careful because I don't want RAM to now manipulate a bunker that is dug, and I don't want it to manipulate a green that I'm going to be putting on. So what we can do here is I can do this show terrain shape, and now I get this overlay here, and that's going to give me an idea of what, before I hit carve, what is RAM going to do to my terrain. So if I come down here and take a look at this, and I come down here to eye level, gives you a better idea of what it's going to do. And this actually doesn't look too bad. So you can see it's going to flatten the area where my spline is, where my ram spline, my river spline is, and then it's going to manipulate the terrain 5 meters in each side. So you can see if I change the smooth distance to 1, it's only going to go out here 1 meter, but it's got to be a little bit more aggressive now with how it trains in. And I'm going to have this, you can see there's going to be like a sharp edge here. Now, let's change this back to like 3, and let's just adjust my smooth here. And now you can see if I make this 0, it doesn't do any smoothing, and I'm just going to get this big flat, which is really not what I want because I'm going to have a really hard edge right here. But if I start to adjust this, you can see that my green area here starts to touch the terrain, and you can see how it's going to raise this up. And if I make it too aggressive here, you can see here how I'm going to have these sharp edges, and it's not going to look quite right. So you can use this to kind of find, just want to round that a little bit. There, I have my computer locked up here for a second. So I like it right about there. That looks pretty good. So now let me turn off my RAM spline quick. Oops, let me turn off my hide terrain shape. And you can see how ugly this cart path is up here. So I'm going to show you the difference before and after. So here it is. It's really sideways here. It's wavy. So let me turn my RAM spline back on. And now I'm going to do is I'm going to hit carve terrain. But before I do that, what should we do? I'm not going to waste your time, but we should create a terrain backup. That way, if this goes sideways, we can always revert back. But you get the idea. So let me hit carve terrain, and it'll take a second. And now you can see what happened was it carved that terrain, and let me hide my RAM spline now. And you can see what happened here is, so it did blend it in pretty good here. I like it, actually. It looks pretty good. So now when I could have probably did a little bit more smoothing and adjust it, but I think that's good enough for our purposes, right? Yeah, I like that. It's a little bit of a hard edge, and what I could always do is smooth that by hand, or sometimes what you can do is if I control Z, it did undo it. So in that case, I was able to get back and I could adjust this smooth distance a little bit. So let me raise this to 4, show my shape, smooth it a little bit more, carve it again, and then hide my RAM spline. Yeah, that looks even better. Looks pretty nice. but you can see now how nice looking and flat, and it looks like a real cart path is. All right, here's the area right here I haven't done. Doesn't look so good, so we'll have to come back and do that, but you get the idea. Same principles apply for our lake polygons as well. Right, we had the same thing, which is our smooth. We've got our profile, so we're going to make a profile, how it's going to dig. We probably don't want to dig it. 2 meters isn't bad. I typically make it a meter. And same thing with the distance. Now this has a start distance. That means that it's going to wait 1 meter outside of our spline before it starts to do our carving. Okay, and there's no real smooth strength on this one as well, so it's a little bit different. But you're going to get the idea in the upcoming videos.